The tunnel wasn't here originally. So this is the homestead of Isaac Rees, who died in 1828, and his son Eli. The Rees Mill, now known as Hershey Mill. And there's a Rees dog, an Ed Rees dog. This is the Hershey Mill I used to go to, but it looks like the waterfall has been turned off. There's a mill wheel up there. And here comes the Hershey Mill estate, and used to be Isaac Rees's home, who died in 1828. Well, this is the back side of the Isaac Rees Mill. D. Reamer, I have his card, explained to me that they turned the water off because of flooding in the road, and they're working on making the corrections so they can do all that. And across the road was Isaac's father, Eli's grandfather, Thomas Rees, who built a mansion up here, and it is now the Hershey Mill estate, home for old folks. Ironic. Somewhere it is written that the owner of the Hershey Mills estate, my great-great-great-great-great-grandfather Thomas Rees, along with a neighbor, buried 7 Revolutionary American soldiers on his land after the Battle of the Clouds. Downtown Goshenville, not even on the map, in East Goshen Township. Jesse Rees' home. Last time I was here, this was a B&B called the Tory End. Goes back to 1800 with Eli's uncle Jesse, who happened to commit murder right out here, beating a neighbor to death with a fence post. Eventually captured and punished, but there's a big story on that one. Well, at least they recorded some history, but they spelled the last name wrong at the time. It was R-E-E-S. Earlier it was R-H-Y-S. Now mine is R-E-E-S-E. Ely Rees, the father of the Rees family, by Edward Clifton Rees, United States Navy, retired. When Ely Rees was born, there had already been 4 generations of Reeses in America before him. The first generation being Thomas Rees, who left his home in Wales around 1686, arriving in Haverford Township, Chester County, Pennsylvania. Thomas, a carpenter and a Quaker, married Frances Price, a spinster, on February the 27th, 1692, she being of the same faith. They had 6 children. One son, Isaac Rees, married at Radnor Meeting House Mary Evans on April the 9th, 1725, and they had 9 children. Their oldest son, Thomas, married Esther, and to them were born 11 children. One of their sons, Isaac Rees, married Esther Matson, and then they had 8 children. Ely Rees, the 5th generation, was the oldest of those 8 children. His story follows. Ely Rees was born January 7, 1783, in northeastern Goshen Township, Chester County, Pennsylvania. This property was located 22 miles from Philadelphia, 4 miles from Westchester. Ely began his life on the same plantation as did his father Isaac and his grandfather Thomas. 6 years before Eli's birth and during the American Revolution, the Battle of Brandywine took place. It was the 11th of September, 1777. A skirmish took place on the land of Eli's grandfather, Thomas Rees. This skirmish with the British was on the high ground, a mile and a half north of Goshen Meeting House, and a half mile or more a little west of south of the Three Tons Tavern. 12 American soldiers were killed and buried on the Rees plantation. There was extensive property damage to the Rees plantation, including 9,000 fence rails burned. Eli's grandfather listed the rails and made claim for over 215 pounds in damages. Records indicate that Eli's father Isaac may have been fighting for the Americans as a member of the local battalion in the militia at this time. Long after the Revolution in 1795, Isaac and Esther, Eli's parents, purchased land in nearby Brandywine Township. 3 years later, Eli's uncle Joseph, while living with his brother Benjamin in Goshen, died at his home from a head injury after a fall from the scaffold. When Eli was 15 years old, his maternal grandmother Ann Matson died, leaving small legacies to Eli as well as to Thomas, Isaac Jr., Esther, Ann, Elizabeth, Hannah, and Sarah, his brothers and sisters. Sarah received her grandmother's looking glass. Ely Rees reached the age of maturity, and on July the 4th, 1806, he married Elizabeth McCullough. This was the same year his grandfather Thomas Rees died. Later, Elizabeth had 2 healthy children, Mary Ann, born September the 13th, 1807, and Isaac, named after Eli's father, born July 9th, 1810. Next, while living at the mill in Goshen, Elizabeth gave birth to little Eliza, born December the 21st, 1812. The baby died within a week. It is not known if it was Eliza's death or some other long-forgotten tragedy, but on May 4th, 1813, the first of Eli's problems began. Along with his brother-in-laws, James and John McCullough, and his uncle Jesse Rees, he was arrested for assaulting one Joseph Hoffman. Among the witnesses was Joseph Phillips, owner of the Three Tons Tavern. Since the owner of the tavern was present, and the Reeses continued to be involved with the Three Tons Tavern, we may safely assume that the assault took place in the tavern. The reason for the fight is not known. It appears that Jesse Rees was released without charge, and Eli was found not guilty, as it related to him. James and John McCullough were ordered committed until they paid fines and court costs. It greatly angered Eli's young pregnant wife, Elizabeth, having both her husband and brothers involved in such a scandal. On December the 20th, 1814, Elizabeth gave birth to her second son, Eli Jr. She could not have known that this son would die at a relatively young age from a gunshot wound inflicted by a Mr. Reed. The court in Potter County, Pennsylvania, suspected he was murdered. However, Reed was released, but that is a later story. Elizabeth gave birth to another son named after Thomas, Eli's grandfather, on the 6th of June, 1817. Elizabeth reserved the privilege of giving little Thomas McCullough Rees her maiden name as his middle name. 1 month after the birth of the daughter, Hannah M. Rees, Eli ran into another problem with the law. In the August 1819 term of the Chester County Court, Ely Rees petitioned the court to allow him to have a license to dispense spirituous liquors at the public house of entertainment known as the Three Tons Tavern. Apparently this was not approved because soon after Eli was again arrested, this time for dispensing liquor without a license at the Three Tons Tavern. It seems Eli became dissatisfied with the events of the time and decided with his family to move out west. To start the journey, Eli would need only go a mile or so north of the family plantation to Lancaster Turnpike, sometimes called the Great Road. He would have found this road to be an almost unbroken procession of ponderous Conestoga wagons, each drawn by 5 or 6 strong horses loaded with goods for the western country. It must have been quite a sight. It appears Eli and his young family fell into this formation and headed west. It is not clear where Ely Rees and his family may have traveled, nor where they may have homesteaded. The 1820 census shows Eli and his family living in Robinson Township, Allegheny County, Pennsylvania, near Pittsburgh. A later census has Eli's son James claimed to have been born May 8, 1822, somewhere in Ohio. In any event, his pioneer days were short-lived. In 1824, Eli received word of his father's death back in Goshen, and he returned. At the time of Eli's departure, Elizabeth was pregnant with her 8th child. Eli and Elizabeth, expressing their pioneer spirit through their child, named him Christopher Columbus Rees. He was born on April the 23rd, 1824. A few years before Eli's father's death, in February 1819, Isaac had his wife's right of dower removed because she had lost her mind. This was done legally through an act of the legislature of the state of Pennsylvania. This allowed Isaac to sell the lands at Brandywine and purchase land which was in the area of the original plantation in Goshen. After the sale, Isaac and Esther returned to Goshen. There, Isaac managed his growing plantation while living in his new spacious stone home. No matter how appealing the new home, in Esther's state of mind, she probably resisted the move. In 1822, October, Esther mysteriously disappeared. Frantically searching for his wife, Isaac placed the following ad in a local newspaper. On the night of the 4th, my wife Hester Rees, being in a deranged state of mind, left her home and has not since been heard of. She is a middle-sized woman, has sandy hair mixed with gray. When she went, she neither had bonnet nor hat. Any information, contact Rees Mills at Goshen, later known as Hershey Mills. Possibly heartbroken from the loss of his wife, Isaac died several months later. The death of Eli's father on May 21, 1823, was a tragic event, being it so soon after his mother's disappearance. Isaac's death also split up the family because at the time he did not have a will, and the courts were left to decide the outcome of the estate. Petty bickering ensued among the children. When Eli returned from the western country, he stayed at the plantation during the court proceedings and helped sell his father's property. An ad was placed in the local paper offering the plantation for public sale. The ad in part follows. November 17, 1824, at Goshen, Pennsylvania. The buildings for sale are a grist mill 3 stories high, 42 by 30 feet, with 2 pair of burr stones and a hauling machine. A sawmill in good repair, a new stone dwelling 13 by 17 feet, with a well and a pump at the door of the kitchen, 20 by 18 feet. A new frame barn, 46 by 20 feet, a stone spring house, a wagon house, and a wood house. Persons disposed to view the property will be applying to Ely Rees on the premises. Just about every child of Isaac had petitioned the court for their share of the estate. Uncle Jesse Rees claimed at the time of his brother's death he could not find Eli, he being somewhere out of state. Eli was the oldest son and was most likely to be named executor and to inherit the majority of the family plantation. Arriving too late and without a will prepared by his father, he felt helpless to make claim to what he believed to be the rightfully his. He also petitioned the court. When it was all settled, they all received what the court considered was a fair share, but the bitterness continued. Eli had lost his plantation. He blamed his Uncle Jesse. During the next few years, little is known of Eli and his family. Elizabeth did give birth to her ninth and last child, J. Miller Rees, on February 27, 1827. It has been said that Elizabeth's mother's maiden name was Miller. Eli managed to witness his daughter Mary Ann's wedding to John Gillespie, later shortened to Gillespie, on April 2, 1828, in nearby Middletown Township, Delaware County, Pennsylvania. A few months later, he showed up again as a witness to another wedding in the same neighborhood. In the spring of 1830, Eli agreed to purchase land from and to act as a land agent for Samuel Webb of Philadelphia. Eli, for the last time, took his family of 6 sons, 2 daughters, and his son-in-law John Gillespie on the road again, this time to Sylvania Township, Potter County, Pennsylvania. They brought all they needed to start a new life in this wilderness, including their own water-powered sawmill. All of Eli's sons became carpenters except his oldest, Isaac, who became a blacksmith after learning a related trade, the gunsmith trade, in West Philadelphia. The Reeses built many of the first frame homes in western Potter County. After 18 productive years at his new homestead, and although in his later years unable to work himself, Eli Rees supervised his son's carpentry right up to the end, dying as his father had before him at age 65. According to one account of his death, Eli's son Isaac and one grandson, possibly William Wesley Rees, became concerned for Eli's well-being when he did not return from his supply walk to Coudersport, Pennsylvania. They went up the ridge road looking for him and found him dead on an old log, he still in a sitting position. A coroner's inquest determined that Eli Rees had died by the visitation of God in a natural way and not otherwise. If you should visit the Rees Cemetery in Potter County, be sure to look at Eli and Elizabeth's tombstone. It's over 100 years old and is quite worn. The Eli side of the stone is a small inscription just under the words "died, May 19, 1848, age 65. It is still visible if you squint just right at the correct angle and do it just before sunset. You may be able to read these faded words. Mark the perfect ones, and behold the upright, for the end of that man is peace.